Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff, Mosher, and Adam Caplan, and we are going to finish a two-part series we started last week. We are talking about Philadelphia Eagles, who are under the microscope going into the 2025 season. Last week, we did it about offensive players under the microscope, not under the radar. Under the radar means people aren't talking about you enough.
Yeah.
Under the microscope means you, my friend, you, Mr. Philadelphia Eagle, are really expected to, state your case in 2025 for being either a starter or a very key role player. And Adam, we know on defense, that list is pretty long because the Eagles are trying to replace half their starting lineup as it is.
Yeah, at least 5 new starters, and guys are going to have new roles. Sometimes they're players, you see this in the NBA where they're really good sixth men. When they become starters, they're not quite as effective. So that's going to be the challenge for some of these guys who were, even if they didn't play a lot, but some were really good behind the scenes. As we noted last fall, Trotter was doing very well in practice, but now he may be starting week 1. So we'll have to see what happens there. But a guy, by the way, I do want to mention, a guy that was a starter, he's a rotational player, was Vinny Curry, who was on with us on Patreon. Was it Thursday night? He was phenomenal.
Oh, last week, yeah, he was really great. It's one of the, I know we keep saying it's one of the great perks of being a Patreon member because nobody's doing what we're doing, which is taking our Patreon members and allowing them to talk directly to maybe somebody they grew up rooting for or idolizing, a former Eagle player, coach, or front office executive. And it was a great time, right, to have Vinny as we're doing sort of this under the microscope series, because I pointed out when I introduced him, his first 2 years, he didn't play a whole lot as a second-round pick. You know, Jim Washburn was the defensive line coach. He had his guys. And then everything changed for Vinny in year 3, which, Adam, is usually, as we'll talk about in this episode, for a lot of guys, that's when you need to have, you need to know who you are. And the organization needs to know by year 3 what they have in you, because that's when they like to give the extensions. Like Cam Jurgens just got one after year 3. And Vinny broke out in year 3 for 9 sacks, and he got his extension. And then shortly after that, Doug and Jim Schwartz were in command that year. So actually he got the extension. Then that happened. And then, he was a big part of the Eagles' first Super Bowl win. He was a starter, a really important part of that defensive line group that rotated. And he talked to all about it. And it was really our guys, our Patreon members, I thought, asked really awesome questions. And he was more than happy to talk about it. It was great.
2 things. He never started a game until year 6. I'm shocked by that.
Yep.
Which is hard to believe. And you had a note when you introduced him that, because obviously you got to know him pretty well. You covered him closely and got to know him personally. That he had such great energy. I guess you were talking about how nobody wanted it as bad as he did. Like what did you mean by that?
Well, so as we talked about, remember when he got drafted in 2012, that was the Jim Washburn. I think that was the last year of Andy Reid and Jim Washburn. So he didn't play. He only played 6 games as a second-round pick. And that was, I could see it in his eye. Him and Brandon Graham were behind Trent Cole and Jason Babin. And it was really tough for them to get on the field. Brandon was still coming back from the injury, and that was the point of his career where it just wasn't working out for him at that point, right? And I would talk to those guys a lot. And when things weren't going well for their season, they were wondering, all right, well, are they going to put us in? Are they going to put us in? And they never got put in. And I would see Vinny, and I told the people on Patreon, you could see the hunger in his eyes. Yeah. And then even year 2, which was for Vinny, 2013, I think that was Doug and Jim Schwartz's first year, where he started to play more, but he wasn't a starter. And you're right. I mean, he was always a rotational guy. I mean, there was always Trent Cole, and then BG started to work his way up. So Vinny didn't start until the Super Bowl year, but he did have 9 sacks that 3rd year as a reserve. So you knew he was coming in and giving them really good quality production, and that's what got him that contract extension.
It's interesting. So again, he was a backup for obviously many years, but a key one though for a number of years. And you want to talk about rotations. In 2017, where he obviously had a very good year in his role, 56% of snaps on defense. Like, that's a perfect quasi-starter rotational player. I know he only had 3 sacks, but that doesn't really tell you everything. Pressures, run fits, which are as the force player, very important. Just a really big part of that sub package. And also he played special teams too. It wasn't like he didn't do that either. He just became a solid quality second round pick over a number of years.
Yeah. And Vinny had his own, like I guess he got to the statistician in 2017, and he noted that he led the NFL. I think he said in tackles for a loss and hurries / pressures on first down, because he was basically playing first and second down. So he was doing a job really well. Yeah. And just overall, he's a great human being. So he's really fun to talk to. So all the questions were it made for good discussion.
It was. And the story that he told, we won't give this away. This is an incredible story.
Oh, yeah.
That to Aaron, who's been a longtime member of Patreon, he wasn't in there, but we allowed people, if you can't make it, just leave your questions on the link and we'll ask them. And his story about one of the defensive coaches, we're not going to give it away, was epic. We all rolled, like we just were laughing hysterically. It's one of those, you can't believe this happened, but it happened. Really cool story.
Yeah, I think the story, without giving it away, is you can't believe he was still drafted after by the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you got to watch it. It's great. That's why it pays to be a Patreon member at patreon.com/InsideTheBirds, because of our monthly Ask an Eagle live stream. We get Greg Cosell and Ask Greg Cosell live streams for tier 3. You got their Discord community, and all of our podcasts, all Inside the Birds podcasts, are put up on the Patreon channel early and without commercials, usually the night before, sometimes longer. Then it comes out on the Main Street platform, and no ads or reads or any type of commercials. Just an unbelievable perk and benefit of being a Patreon subscriber. So with that said, we're going to talk about a few people under the microscope this year, kind of the same way Vinny was in year 3 when he finally got some opportunity. And we're always going to start up front, as we do on the Eagles defense. This is where they have a lot of losses to replace, significant ones. Josh Sweat, gone. Milton Williams, gone. BG, retired. Adam, if you do the count, Jimmy Kemsky wrote about this. So did I on Philly Voice. If you just do the count, it's over 1,700 snaps between those 3 players last year that the Eagles have to figure out a way to replace. And the first name that we always talk about, as far as at least Milton Williams, is Moro Ojomo. Him stepping into this role, being that 4-eye when they're in a 5-man front, that 3 technique when they're in a 4-man front, and being as explosive, as disruptive as Milton Williams could be, or at least close to it, right? I mean, I think it's hard to just produce what Milton Williams produced last year. That I don't think Moro Ojomo has to be Milton Williams, but he just has to be good at his job.
Yeah, what's incredible with Moro Ojomo and Jordan Davis? They played exactly the same amount of snaps, 388. I thought it was the case, and I wanted to double check it. They did. Now, obviously, the roles are different. Ojomo is more explosive as a pass rusher. Moro is longer. He's got a great first step. It's one of those situations where you go, how the hell was this guy's 7th-round pick? We had noted, we reported at the time when they drafted him, that there was a knock on him from a sort of a football character, maturity standpoint. That's not been the case here. So this is just the case where the league, as it typically does, overrates things that they think they know what they don't really know. And you got to get to know the player in the background. And he's everything we've heard is, he's just been great behind the scenes. You saw what he did last year, playing over a third of the defensive snaps. Now the question is, now as a full-time player, he did start one game last season, but as a full-time player now, how does he handle that role, going from a third of the snaps to perhaps over 50% of snaps? And is he as effective off tape? It's one thing to look at numbers or pressure rate, but what's the tape really look like? Sometimes guys just they're not as effective when you ask them to play a lot more snaps.
Yes, that's true. I think, unfortunately for him, he's sort of going to be compared, no matter what, to Milton Williams. Yeah. And I remember with Sam Finkel, we did a great Inside the Data mailbag about maybe 2 weeks ago now, where we actually compared their athleticism and their production in college. And they were similar, but Milton Williams scored I don't want to say significantly higher. I think from the athleticism standpoint, Ojomo was like a 90 or 91, whereas Williams was like 98, which doesn't sound like a lot. They're both in the 90s, but it's still a pretty that's a decent jump. So I don't know that we'll see some of the the tremendous athletic feats from Morrow as we did from Milton Williams, the explosion, but he's still a good athlete, Moro Jomo, and he'll get the opportunity. And again, I don't think it's solely on him. This is his third year. I mean, Ty Robinson could work into the mix and some other guys. So, like I said, I think he just has to do his job well. He may not have to dominate for this team to be good, but he just has to at least do it well to A, for the team to pick up from last year, and B, for him to settle into his role and try to get an extension after this year.
That was what I was going to say. So there are a number of players. Jordan Davis is up for extension. He'll have his 5th-year option that was picked up for next season, but he still could get an extension if he has a great season. Ojomo is another guy who's eligible after this season is over. It's been quite the story of development. Really, he barely played as a rookie, but he played quite a bit last season. So let's see what happens. But he has a chance to be a high single-digit sack player, from what I understand, because the tape shows the explosiveness. It in his role, look, you could say, well, where were the sacks last season? That's I understand that, but from a pressure rate, there's something in there for him to be a very good pass rusher. That's the thing. You can't just look at numbers. You got to look at tape.
Oh, sure. Sure. If you just judge Milton Williams, right, we know how dominant he was last year. It's not like he had he had 5 and then the year before he had a half a sack in 2023. Right. So you would think he wasn't doing much, but 7 quarterback hits that year, 3 tackles for a loss. So he was doing fine. And obviously that led to an explosion in year 4 for him.
Sure. And now the one thing we'll look for, right, is do they bring somebody in sub package to play like a BG role? Over the years, would you see BG play inside on the defensive line? Will they have somebody like that? We'll have to see.
It's a good question.
We don't know that they'll do that, but just something to keep an eye on. We'll certainly look for that in training camp.
Especially because they got a decent number of edge rushers all competing. And if one of them just shows that they can move inside, that might give them another. Yep, agreed. So you mentioned Jordan Davis. He's another guy that we have on our list of under the microscope, and he's really under the microscope this year. The Eagles picked up his 5th-year option. They talked about the fact that they saw an improved pass rusher in the second half of last year in the postseason, but at the same time, whatever they saw did not, coerce them to want to play Jordan Davis any more on 3rd down than they were earlier in the year. So he'll probably have some opportunities, especially in training camp, to see if that carries over, to see if he continues to improve that area. But I would think, Adam, that he's under the microscope because if by the end of next year we're saying he's still only playing 13 to 15 snaps per game, then it didn't work out the way, and maybe the coaches were overstating the improvement as a pass rusher.
Well, his snap total went down from 23 to 24, which is not great, but he definitely looked better late in the season. He does play on special teams quite a bit. So the expectation is in year 4, boy, time has flown here.
Yeah.
You and I actually saw him at the, what was the dinner in New Jersey? The
Maxwell Awards.
Yeah, Maxwell Club Awards. Yeah, and I remember saying, wow, this is a big dude,
It was huge.
So here we go. Year 4, supposedly he's in really good shape. Let's see. The thing with him is it's a technique issue, because when you play high, when you're standing up, when you're not, low man always wins, that crushes your technique. And as Greg Cosell has told us, he loses any power that you might think he has is completely gone. When you stand up, there's 0 power, and you could get moved back. He could be literally 500 pounds. Any player can, but if you're standing up, you can be moved back. It doesn't matter how much you weigh. So you got to play with better technique consistently.
Yes. There were some times we watched some film on Jordan Davis, and it would be a game where he had a pressure or a rare sack, and then 6 snaps would not be great, though. So you would think he'd had this good game if you were just box score scouting, and then you would say, yeah, but there were so many opportunities to do this or that, and you didn't see it there. So you'd like to see the consistency from him. We get asked a lot of questions, especially Sam for Inside the Data, and we did an entire mailbag episode last week, and Sam did such a good job because I specifically asked him to, in the spirit of what the coaches said, if he could break down Jordan Davis last year game by game to see if there are any metrics that show that as the season went on, his ability to rush the passer got better, or the stats in that department got better. And everybody should check it out because Sam pulled out some really interesting graphs and charts, and it's hard. The small sample size always makes it difficult because, again, even with quote unquote improvement, he only played like 13 snaps a game. So it's hard to read long term into such little contribution. But there were some really interesting data and metrics that went into the whole episode, and everybody should check it out. It'll give you a little bit of I would say, a clearer picture on what Jordan Davis's season was like last year.
Good. Yeah. And he did end the season well. So as we move on here as this list goes along, this one is interesting. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., right now, if the season started, he'd be starting, but they got to get through training camp. Smile Mondin is there.
Yeah.
Who's a 5th round pick. And we have to see what Jihad Campbell at some point in August when he's ready, because we know he's going to start off. They're going to train him first at inside backer. We'll see about edge of the season. But look, if he's on the field for 3 weeks in August and he looks great, he's probably going to start. But they're not going to know that till they get there. They have a plan for him, but you have to see how a player's learning is. You have to see how he handles it. Because how they taught it at Alabama's there are going to be some differences between what he got there and how Fangio and Bobby King won it. So they have to get through that. But the odds are that Trotter will start week 1. Not a lock, but the spotlight will be on him in terms of, okay, let's see what happens. How does he handle the first team reps? We know he's very smart. He did very well in practice last season, as we understand it. But that was then. This is now. He now is going to be asked to handle a much bigger role.
Yeah, Adam, I was thinking about, or I was sort of wondering how much the schedule might play into this, because, we know that Jihad Campbell will not be practicing, until at some point in camp. They don't even know when. And if you look at the first 4, I was thinking about how Cooper DeJean last year was injured, also got off to a slower start because he couldn't practice as much as everybody else. And he didn't even, really play until week 5. But look at the schedule. It starts off with Dallas, then the Chiefs, then the Rams, and the Bucks. And, I would think Vic wants somebody who's knows what they're doing out there, is 100%, may not be the greatest athlete in the world, but, is disciplined, understands the position. I think that gives Trotter Jr. the advantage just because he's played that position. He's not transitioning. He's not, 2 years off the way Campbell is, not coming back from an injury. He's going to be taking all the first team reps until Campbell's ready to practice. He took all the first team reps in the OTAs. It almost seems like they're preparing him for that. I mean, because they don't have a choice, A, because there's nobody else, but B, he was impressive last year. Vic Fangio said it. So it would be hard, I think, at this point to knock him off out of that starting spot outside of Bourne. I'm not saying it can't be done because Campbell's such a great athlete and maybe he can come back early. We'll see. But I agree with that. I think if you handicap it now, it makes the most sense that Trotter at least gets the first 3-4 weeks of the season.
Although, now if Mondin has remember, they're both 5th round picks.
True.
One year after another. If Georgia program, Eagles know this very well. It was Schumann, the D coordinator they interviewed a couple years ago.
Yep.
So they know this program. They know the player. Who knows? I mean, if he blows it up, because he's a little longer than Trot Jr. So we'll have to see what happens. But they're very low on depth. I mean, that's a position where there are a number of players that they can look at who are out there. There are a number of veterans, but right now their plan is for Trot Jr., as he did in the offseason, to start out with the starters.
Yeah, we did that. We did a pod once, maybe a couple of weeks ago, on depth at each position, right? And then we were mentioning some potential names. And CJ Mosley has since retired. He has announced his retirement, so you can scratch that one off. But as you mentioned, it was still a buyer's market if you're looking for a veteran inside linebacker who could come in and know his role and be a backup and start if he had to. So we'll see as we get closer to camp. I do think they're going to add a body just to add, because they need bodies.
Yeah, they need to add it. It doesn't have to be like a 10-year vet. It's just you have 3 teams on defense. You have to get through it. Yeah, they definitely need to have one at some point in training camp, because then, of course, you got the preseason, and you don't want your starters playing the preseason. So, yeah, it would behoove them to sign as many as 2, but at least 1. Yep, I agree.
All right, let's get to the edges, because it seems like the entire group of edges is under the microscope in 2025, because, I mean, you've lost so much. You lose Josh Sweat. You lose Brandon Graham to retirement, and that's pretty big. Those are big losses. And now you're kind of starting with one of the youngest edge tandems, if not the youngest and least experienced edge tandem in the entire league. As we pointed out several times, Jalix Hunt, a second-year player, and Nolan Smith, a third-year player, have combined for 11 starts in the NFL. Jalix Hunt has 1. So, Adam, both of these guys, I think that in general, you look at their trajectory and you're thinking good. Everything you saw from Jalix Hunt was really good year 1, and Nolan Smith put it together at the end of year 2. Really started to learn speed to power moves and look more like an edge than an off-ball linebacker moonlighting at edge. And that's great. However, young, inexperienced, and like we always say this, progression isn't always linear. Sometimes guys take a step back. Sometimes the league catches up with them faster than they realize. So these guys are under the microscope for a lot of reasons.
So lot to unpack with Hunt. Let's get started with him. So he did not have a snap on defense last season till week number 4. That game he dressed. Eagles got blown out of Tampa, so they got him on the field. But he played on special teams really early. In fact, he was a healthy and active week 1 because, again, their plan was to, if at best, be a 4th edge rusher, but really not be a factor in defense. Just learn the system year 1, learn what the coaches want in year 2, have a bigger role, maybe challenge for a starting spot for by year 3. Everything's been accelerated. He played a ton on special teams. As a matter of fact, it really started for him in week 2 on specials with 59% of the snaps. And he kept playing a ton on special teams, not a lot on defense, until the game at Dallas where they crushed Dallas. And if you remember we talked to Greg because he was doing the film study. Greg said that Hunt showed up in that game, and it was a blowout. So you're just looking for individual sort of snaps and see what you could see. And you could. Greg said there were some really good snaps in that game. Then the Washington game, he didn't really play, only on specials. Then Vic stayed with him. He put him back in. Then you got the BG. That's when it was the Rams game where BG got hurt the next week after the Washington game. Then he started to have to play because Huff had the wrist surgery. And when Huff came back, he didn't get his job back. And Jalix Hunt really never looked back. Now, he only started 1 game, as you said, and it was the game that really wound up meaning nothing, week 18. Remember, starting only means technically who's in for the first snap of the game on offense or defense, but what his role was. He was in a rotation with their edge rusher group, did a really good job. The tape got better and better and better. You know what is interesting is they didn't take him off special teams, even though he's playing a decent amount. Though depending on which game, some snaps are up, sometimes snaps are down on defense, but he certainly had a meaningful role. And now going forward, they're asking him to be a full-time starter, whatever that means. 60% play time, 40, that's something that they'll get through during August.
Yeah, I think what really jumps out to me is the immediate trust that Vic showed in Jalix Hunt because Jalix proved he can handle it. Because remember when BG tore his triceps and Huff wasn't playing, I mean, they were really thin. They went and signed, was it Charles Harris, right? And in a lot of cases, you sign a guy off the street, you're going to play him a little bit because you need that experience. You're so thin. And Hunt got vaulted to the top of the totem pole, and they barely ever played Charles Harris or KJ Henry or whoever, they were bringing in. Hunt got the opportunity and he never looked back. And that was really cool to see from a development standpoint.
Yeah, Charles Harris, a former first rounder, was it the Dolphins?
Yes, Dolphins. And then he went and played with the Lions, right? Yeah. I think there was another team in there.
Yeah, Harris. I mean, he it's funny. He was active for 4 games, but he didn't do anything. He just because they didn't need him to. It turned out to be that they had such good guys filling in. Hunt was always a big story. Yeah. So the only question for Hunt is from a technique standpoint, because he's so raw. This is year 4 for him as an edge rusher. 2 years at Houston Christian. He was a safety before that, and now his 2nd year with the Eagles. So he's still very raw. This is a big ask to ask him to do it. I know he's very smart and coachable. That's great. But this is a big role, asking him to be a full-time starter here. This is a big deal for him. I will be interested to see if they take him off special teams or do they limit his special team snaps. That's something we'll look for in training camp.
Good question. Andrew DeCecco wrote a really good story came out Monday morning on the fact that The team asked Hunt to get a little bit bigger and stronger in the offseason. That was their number one ask of him at the exit interviews. So Andrew caught up with J.Alex Hunt's trainer down in Houston,
nice,
where he went to college, and talked about what techniques they're using to make sure that he does get bigger, but does not lose the explosion. So it's a great story. Check it out, InsideTheBirds.com. And then obviously in the backups, it's Azeez Ojulari and Josh Uche are definitely under the microscope. I feel for different reasons. I think if you just look at Ojulari's career, as long as he's healthy, he's a very productive player. He's a situational player, so you hope that he never has to be a starter, but he's productive when he is on the field. Whereas Uche is trying to show that 1 year that he was very productive, but hasn't been since, that something that within the Eagles, as Greg Cosell says, there's something there, and that maybe the Eagles can coax it out of him. For him, it's more about really making this team and showing he's a good player.
Yeah, Uche has such a low end deal.
Yeah,
he's got to work his way onto the team. So it's Smith coming back from the triceps, but he was very close at the end of their offseason program. So we are assuming he'll be on the field early and cleared. You got Hunt, you got Smith, Ojulari. He mentioned Ojulari to me. He's going to, unless something surprising happens, he's going to be their third edge. That's what they signed him to be, and I mean, we'll see what happens in terms of how many snaps that looks like, but he just got to stay on the field because the tape is phenomenal when he's healthy. You got Uche, who you want to be your fourth. Powell Ryland, who there'll be weeks he doesn't dress if everybody's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so you keep four. He'll almost certainly make it as the fifth. The only way Patrick Johnson makes it is for special teams. You don't use 6 edge rushers. And of course you have the Campbell factor. Mm-hmm. Does he get a chance later in the year to play some edge? The Eagles are hoping that they don't need him to, that everybody's healthy and playing well, but that's obviously there for the future. So they don't really need anybody. It's just but here's the problem though. If one of them gets hurt, you've got a problem.
Yep.
That's the issue right now.
100%. All right. Hey, if everybody stays healthy, by the way, this could be a really nice edge rusher group between exactly. I mean, those four, and then you see what you get out of APR, but that's pretty good. But it's kind of sort of a big if given some of these guys' injury histories and track records.
Correct.
All right. First time we're going to talk about this with our friends at Stretch Zone. The app is back. Stretch Zone has brought back the easy-to-use phone app on iOS or Android. So now members can just use the app to book appointments. Adam, do you use the app to book your appointment?
Oh, yeah. Let me, folks could see this. Yes. Here's what's funny. Yeah. I didn't know that it was back because we were told that it was coming back, but I just, because I update my, everything. And then, I just happened to put in, well, no, I'm sorry. I saw it on IG. They had a promo for him. Like, wow, this is amazing. Mm-hmm. I didn't know anything about it. And I was like, all right, let me download it. And it's even better than before. And it does everything. It tells you how many credits you have.
Awesome.
Wherever you want to be, what days you want to schedule, whatever location you want to go to. And by the way, when you become a member, you can get after you get your free 30-minute stretch, you could, once you become a member, if you tell people and they sign up, you get a free stretch. I know people have gotten because they tell so many people, a couple of months they don't have to pay because they've gotten so many people to sign up.
That's great.
And by the way, you could just, when you sign up, you could just do it for a month if you want to. I mean, there's no you don't have to sign up for a year or anything like that. And you sign up for 3 ways: stretchzone.com. You can call the nearest location, or you could visit them online, and which is what a lot of people do. We talked about for a gift certificate and stuff like that. But you've done it, I've done it, my wife does it. A lot of people go in there, and the good thing is they're kind of everywhere across the country as well. For people living on the West Coast, they're out there in California as well.
Yeah, and of course they have their 13 locations in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. What are your favorite locations, Adam?
Yeah, so in Chester County, it depends where I am. In Chester County, Haverford, Devon, or Exton are the 3 that I typically go to. South Philly, Washington Ave. I know Desperado, the Eagles will see him in there. In Montgomery County, where I grew up, in Elkins Park. I've passed it a bunch of times. My dentist is still there, believe it or not, in Elkins Park. Upper Dublin, Dresher, Feasterville, and then the new one in Warrington, which is way up there. 309 at 611 area. And then where you are in New Jersey, Cherry Hill, Mount Laurel, Franklin Lakes, Northfield, and Princeton, 13 locations. Get the app. And to finish this off, it doesn't cost anything to have your free 30-minute stretch, folks. There's really no reason why you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, if you're like us and you just like things that are free, you know what? Go for it. 30-minute stretch. And I guarantee you, once you get one 30-minute stretch, you'll want another one. And
I was hooked.
A great member.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was hooked at because I want to feel better. And I know for what you do and because you're a runner.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many times I've called Geoff and I'm like, what are you doing? Because I hear him breathing heavily. Oh, he's running. Okay.
I've had a few conversations doing that. Yes.
yeah. But you want to get stressed. You want to feel better. And I'm telling you, I cannot play tennis 4 days a week without it.
Absolutely. All right. That's our friends at Stretch Zone, stretchzone.com.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, let's continue. We'll look at some guys under the radar on the back end of the Eagles, not under the radar, under the microscope of the back end of the Eagles defense. And what the one that really just jumps out involves that competition at left cornerback between Keely Ringo and Adoree Jackson. I think of both of them, Ringo really is the microscope player because we go back to that theme of it's year 3. It's time to either make or break and either establish yourself as part of this team and productive, or it's going to be hard for you to be around unless you have an amazing year 4.
Yeah, I would say with Ringo, they know what they have here. They know what the challenges are. They know what he's got in his body, the length, the speed, the 1-2. He's got that. He's doing all the right things. He's just got to put it together. It's their sincere hope that he wins the starting job. Sure, he'll enter training camp technically as a starter, but that means absolutely nothing. Folks, the offseason, no matter what position it is, it's like another season. The offseason is like it's never happened. Once you get to training camp, anything that you did in the offseason is irrelevant. It's about what you're going to do going forward. I would liken to the offseason is AA baseball. Oh, guys, he's killing it at like the Phillies guy at Reading. That's great. Let's see what he does at AAA. Well, AAA is training camp, preseason, and regular season is the majors. But we saw this with Ringo last year. He didn't carry over anything really from the offseason. First week we kind of knew that it was kind of over for him starting. That Rodgers took the job, so he's got to take it and run with it. And ultimately, how he does will decide whether they go out and sign a veteran or not, or make a trade. How he's done this at other positions before the start of the season. We saw this in 2017 with Ronald Darby right before the season started.
That's right. Good old Ronald Darby. And then CJ Gardner-Johnson at safety before 2022. So that's the ripe time for Howie to kind of, what do we call it, recalibrate and see what he's got.
And Adoree Jackson. Yeah, I just want to mention him. And the thing, look, they saw in the tape last year he could still run, but as we've learned throughout the 8 years of doing this show, you never know when a guy's going to lose it when his legs go. So far, so good. Let's see what happens in training camp, though.
I was going to say that I was sort of underwhelmed with the Adoree Jackson. I mean, I realized it was just a one-year deal. It is what it is. But you're trying to replace Slay here. And watching him in mini camps, I was actually impressed with how well he still moves. Smooth mover, fluid hips. I mean, he was a first-round pick for a reason, even though it was several years ago. But I could see the traits that made him, a desirable cornerback and a pretty good corner in the league for a while. And I don't think this will be easy for Keely Ringo because Adoree may not be at the top of his game anymore, but he's neither. By the way, Slay had lost a little bit of a step over the last few years, but was still veteran and smart enough and good enough to hold his own. And I think Adoree will give Keely Ringo all of that and then some.
You know what's interesting about Slay is, okay, so you mentioned how he lost a step. And then Greg Cosell tells us, he goes, I got to tell you guys, all of a sudden he's playing really well. Slay to close the season. That is like crazy at 34 years old. You just don't see that. But with Adoree Jackson, I mean, he turns 30 in September, so he's a 30-year-old player. He's had a number of injuries. He's under 5'11". He's closer to 5'10", but he's super competitive. He's a smart guy. He could still run. But I would say this: if he does win the starting job, I hope it's because it's clear that he was better than Ringo, rather than they just handed him the job because Ringo wasn't good enough. So to me, honestly, if Ringo's not good enough, that's when you start considering, if you're Howie, okay, we're going to have to add another veteran, because if Ringo can't do it, if it's clear he cannot be a starter with Jackson's injury history, and this team absolutely could go on another run, you can't take any chances. So we'll see what happens.
Agreed. And that leaves us with our final player, who is under the microscope in a really big way. Again, it's that year 3, time to shine, time to stay who you are. And you hope it's not too late for this kid, because the Eagles have obviously made moves at safety, and Sidney Brown right now finds himself looking up at Reed Blankenship and maybe even Andrew Makuba. You don't draft a guy in the second round who fits your scheme to a T to not get that guy on the field. So Sidney Brown has a lot of work to do to show that he is a disciplined player, that he can function within the scheme that Vic Fangio is playing, that he is some kind of fit somewhere in this defense and can be a usable player. He has some great traits. We saw last year that interception against the Giants from a deep safety where he came across the field and picked off the pass. So the traits can be used in this defense, but it's got to be for 17 weeks, got to be consistent. He has to know what his assignments are and be able to execute them to get on the field.
Yeah, Makuba's got better versatility, and that's the thing. He's got better ball skills. So it's Brown's very physical, but the funny thing is Makuba, despite the narrower frame, though, he's put some mass on that frame. That doesn't guarantee you anything. It's generally a good thing, but you have to see how it translates on the field. But Makuba's just a smooth mover who's been a willing guy that throws body around. So let's see what happens. But you don't draft a guy in the second round not to start. You always draft a guy in the second round. There's no discussion. When you draft a guy in the second round, he better start, and your hope is it's in year 1. So it's going to be hard for Sidney Brown to beat him out, and how they look at this, we'll see what happens. It is his 3rd year, by the way, and there are a number of players that they could extend. Nolan Smith, is we talked about before, Ringo, Ojomo. Again, they have to play well. And Sidney Brown, look, if he wins the job and he blows it up, could have his contract extended. It's a long it's broad thinking there, but it could happen if he hits pay dirt.
Yeah, and remember, this is the final. As of now, it's the final year of Reed Blankenship's deal. That little extension that he signed.
That I'd be shocked if that's not done by training camp.
I would too, but if it's not, and then they can't agree, then maybe you move forward with a Makuba Brown pairing if that's the case going forward. But we're far from there. First, as you just said, Sidney's just got to prove that he's good for this defense, can play in it, and can get a role that Vic Fangio trusts him in. And that is why he is, like many of the guys we talked about, under the microscope in 2025. That's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the Birds. Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.